We've never really covered law around psychedelics.
I am, in fact, an attorney for psychedelic medicine and for cannabis. I am a former narcotics prosecutor. I worked on that side of the industry for a number of years and left public service really depressed. And my priest asked me a question that changed the course of my life.
What do you get when you cross a narcotics prosecutor who discovers ketamine therapy, a psychedelic lawyer? We sit down today with Victoria and we talk this awesome strategy. I learned so much in this chat on Flora Funga Podcast today. Mushroom marketing, the future of plant-based medicines. Even if you sell and make a mushroom product, you should have a psychedelic lawyer. Welcome to Flora Funga Podcast today. Very excited to have this chat. I sit down with Victoria. She focuses everything on psychedelic medicine, cannabis, and functional mushroom law. She helps businesses like you yourself, or maybe somebody that you know, healthcare providers, enter and grow in these challenging spaces. I ask her also about Schedule 35, and if you don't know what Schedule 35 is, it's a company that I'm kind of working with right now where you can get mailed mushroom products directly to your house in the US or in Canada. And so she kind of tells me about their loopholes and how they're operating and how I could possibly learn more about those loopholes and how they are functioning. We also talk about lion's mane powders and the testing and kind of like the whole scam with that. We also mention how not all psychedelics are illegal, so we discover and chat about how not all of them are illegal, so you don't want to miss that one. We also draw the line between educational and felony, like what's that fine line that you should be dancing on or should not be dancing on. So let's dive into this awesome episode. Welcome Victoria to Flora Funga Podcast. Really interesting conversation I think we're about to have, just because we've never really covered law around psychedelics. So are you an attorney for mushrooms or psychedelics or cannabis? What is this whole niche about, and how'd you even get into this space?
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Victoria Svetanovich. I work at a plant medicine and complex industry focused law firm called Rudic Law Group. I am, in fact, an attorney for psychedelic medicine and for cannabis. I got into this actually because I am a former narcotics prosecutor.
Okay.
I worked on that side of the industry for a number of years and left public service really depressed about the state of drug policy in America, the state of healthcare in America, and where those two things intersect.
Mm-hmm.
When I left public service, I went into healthcare law. I defended doctors first and then other medical professionals and hospital networks. And then I started getting onto the transactional side, where we talk about how healthcare practices are built and how it is that they serve patients who come to them needing some kind of medical help.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a medical crisis of my own while I was in that stage of my career. I broke my back.
Oh, wow.
And when I was in extreme chronic pain, I had no idea what to do. A former client of mine, an MD, came to me and said, I think you're a great candidate for psychedelic assisted therapies. Specifically, she was talking at that time about ketamine assisted therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed at her. I said, absolutely not. I'm a former narcotics prosecutor. I'm this very passionate Zen Buddhist who's focused on living a mindful life.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think that there was a place for me in psychedelia. She didn't give up on me. She went to my priest and she said, you got to talk to her about this. And my priest asked me a question that changed the course of my life.
Wow.
Which was, is psychedelic assisted therapy, or are psychedelics generally, for connection or for escapism?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
At that moment, it kind of all clicked that all these wonderful people were not working in this field, were not coming to me in my life because they wanted me to get high and run away from my problems.
Mm-hmm.
They missed me. They wanted their friend back. They wanted their community back. And they saw this as a tool to kind of rejoin society in my new body in the pain that I was in with some extra tools that I needed now.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So after my first ketamine assisted therapy session, I remember grabbing my doctor's hands and telling her, "Oh my God, you have to let me look at your insurance. This can't go away." And sure enough, when I started looking at her insurance, I realized there were things that she could do to reduce her risk working in this new field. So I
Mm,
started working with her on how do you make a ketamine assisted therapy clinic as sustainable to operate and as reliable for patients as possible. And that spread into working with other psychedelic assisted therapy practitioners.
okay.
And from there, the cannabis practitioners started coming to me and saying, how do we do this for cannabis clinics? How do we do this for cannabis patients? I'm the only person I know that went from psychedelic medicine to cannabis law, but it's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
But now I focus my practice on medical psychedelics, legalized psychedelics, and cannabis medicine, as well as the recreational adult use cannabis market,
Hmm.
with the goal of helping people access these tools and therapies that they need in a way that's safe and works for them.
Hmm.
Um, whether that is through supporting decrim measures, the medical market, whatever that is, we're trying to do this legally, safely, and in a way that feels really accessible for people who might be afraid to travel to Peru or not have the financial means to go to Ecuador and figure this out.
Right, right. And you kind of said that psychedelics and ketamine kind of are lumped together. Why do you think that they're kind of paired together? I always kind of thought, maybe, psychedelics like mushrooms or other things like that would be separate from ketamine, or how does that
Yeah,
kind of
that
work?
makes a lot of sense. So there are your classic psychedelics, right? Classic psychedelics being things like psilocybin or
Mm,
psilocin, um, 5-MeO-DMT, things like that, that we think of as substances that cause these psychedelic experiences at fairly standard doses that we can predict that may last for a really long time or cause a trip for a very long time.
hmm.
Ketamine's not a classic psychedelic,
Right.
but it can cause psychedelic experiences.
Okay.
So, ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic. And we know that at higher doses, it causes anesthetic effects, just like anything else you would use in administering anesthesia. It's actually particularly popular in pediatric anesthesia because it keeps lungs really healthy.
Hmm.
Um, at low doses, we've also seen things like Spravato, where ketamine causes some antidepressant effects
Ah.
at
Huh.
a lower dose, specifically S-ketamine, which is a really similar compound to our classic ketamine, but not exactly the same.
Okay.
Then, in this kind of middle range, we see people having experiences that are very similar to those caused by classic psychedelics, but they're having them in a way that's much more easily predictable, at least in a clinical setting, time-wise.
Mm.
So, whereas you might take mushrooms and sometimes the trip lasts 2 hours and sometimes it lasts 12 hours, with ketamine, specifically in an IV form,
Right.
know how long that experience is going to last, and we can kind of monitor you and tell when you're coming out of that experience.
Okay.
So, when we talk about psychedelic assisted therapy, that's kind of an umbrella term
Okay.
for therapeutic modalities that use classic psychedelics and therapeutic modalities like ketamine assisted therapy that use a synthetic that produces psychedelic like alterations of consciousness.
Got it. So that's kind of why it's lumped together is more of the effects rather than kind of like the classification of the medicine. Cool.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and it can be a little confusing, right? Because I think a lot of Americans, especially because of our culture here in the 60s, have a high level of awareness of classic psychedelics. We know kind of what those things are. When it comes to something like ketamine or S-ketamine, we're talking about something that's being used in a way to produce a similar effect rather than something that is structured and classified the same way chemically.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that. I was like, huh, I've never really like thought of it like that, but I get what you mean. Cool.
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk about some of like how your what your clients are. Are they mostly like people just like an average folk? Are they people that are really into psychedelics, or are they kind of like microdosers, Silicon Valley microdosers?
So I think my clients can be divided kind of into three groups.
Okay.
I represent a number of licensed healthcare providers.
Hmm.
Think doctors, think behavioral health licensed people, think therapists, counselors. And these people are often running a medical practice or they're part of a larger medical practice
Okay.
that is offering some form of legal psychedelic therapy. They may be using like ketamine off label from its FDA approved uses to provide this level of psychedelic therapy. They may be part of like a psilocybin trial or a 5-MeO DMT trial.
Ah, right.
But either way, they're looking for a lawyer to help them do two things. They want to help structure their practice in a way that lowers their own personal risk to their license, risk of developing legal liability, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also looking for a lawyer to help them do the best that they can by their patients. Consent for psychedelic assisted therapy is highly different than it would be in other medical modalities. The information you need to share between other practitioners is very different. How you protect data is often very different. These are not services that are typically reimbursable by insurance, so they might not be covered by HIPAA, depending on the relationships between your provider, the state, and any other providers that are working in the practice.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking for somebody to help them structure. How do I talk to my patients so that they are informed?
Right.
How do I help these patients make their own decisions in a way that's, structured, written down, helpful? How do I help patients understand what they're agreeing to?
Yeah.
And how do I help them feel safe entering
Right.
this experience?
Right. Yeah.
Um, my second bucket of clients are people who are small business owners or sometimes even medium or large business owners. A lot of these things start up as startups or, an individual person with a passion.
Mm.
And they're working either within like a medical psychedelic program as a producer or a grower, or they're working in the adult use recreational cannabis market or something like that. And they are looking for a lawyer for the same reason that business owners are always looking for lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
They need people to structure deals that they do with other businesses. They need advice on protecting their customers' data from a cybersecurity perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They need advice on accessibility and how to build not only their business, but their website and digital content in a way that's accessible to all human beings, regardless of disabilities, to the
Mm-hmm.
extent that we can make that available to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very typical corporate practice for an untypical client.
Yeah.
And what we spend a lot of time doing is helping them understand why it is that your industry is regulated differently from other industries and how it is that you can operate within this very tightly controlled environment.
Mm-hmm.
Our kind of third bucket of clients, and these cross from cannabis to psychedelics and also functional mushrooms,
Okay.
are our innovators. These are people, scientists, doctors, etc., that are creating products in the functional mushroom space, usually, but also in cannabis and psychedelics, that are maybe going to go through FDA trials or going to be placed on
Oh,
the market for consumer consumption.
oh wow.
These people often need help with the same kinds of things a business owner does with structuring deals, but they also might need help with like what is required to go on my packaging.
Yeah.
Do I submit this to a lab for testing? How do I know that a lab that I'm working with is giving me accurate test results? And a
Yes.
lawyer kind of steps in this space and helps you with all of that, regardless of whether you're that innovator, that business owner, or that medical provider.
Huh. Cool. I didn't even know that third one, just because. Let's take a quick break. I wanted to shout out a new podcast. Also, can we peep how cute Winnie is down below? Checking out the new bed. We're watching my mom's dog. Leaf It to Us is a brand new podcast, all about fascinating science of plants and how they intersect with our daily lives. Hosted by Nora Sperling, accompanied by a paleobotanist, Dr. Ally Bott Gartner. Leaf It to Us, Get it? Like leaf? Leaf It to Us explores questions. Why are there so many of our favorite houseplants dangerous to our pets? And what exactly goes on inside of a pine cone? In our latest episode, Nora and Allie explore plant distress signals and ask, how do plants scream without a mouth? Leave It to Us podcast is a Descent of Common Descent podcast, which I actually had them on, Flora Funga podcast. A podcast about paleontology and earth history. Nora and Allie decided that they don't talk enough about plants on Common Descent podcast. So they branched off and said, Leave It to Us. Listen to Leave It to Us wherever you get your podcasts. Please check them out. Go follow them. New podcast. They have been putting a lot of work into creating season 1 for you. So please go check them out. All right, back to the episode. So do you think that most functional mushroom like packaging or, small businesses should have a lawyer for that purpose?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's very easy to get in trouble when you enter into any kind of like consumer packaged space,
Okay.
but especially anything that's new.
Yeah.
Functional mushrooms have gotten a lot of attention recently. They're not new by any means, but they are kind of new in the way that they're being marketed to consumers now.
Yes, the trendy mushroom trend.
Right. Trendy mushroom trend. And so when you have something like this, you're up against a couple of problems, right? The first is that there's very little consumer education that can be considered not advertising. So if you're looking for objective consumer information that's not advertising a product, that can be very hard to find. And so it can be difficult for you as a producer or retailer to sell your product when someone doesn't know why they should pick your product over someone else's.
Yeah.
A lawyer can help you design educational content that doesn't cross over the line into making medical claims or testimonials, but can help a consumer understand what it is that they're purchasing and why they want your product. They can also help you with packaging design. They can help you protect your IP and your trademark on that particular packaging or your product itself or your formulation even. They can really get in there and help you make sure that your business is sustainable and not just successful right now. The other kind of problem we see in this like packaging and innovator space is that there are a number of vendors, often these small businesses use things like labs to test their products and test for consistency. If you've never had a lot of like operational experience, it can be difficult to know whether in your packaging agreements, your processing agreements, your testing agreements, you're being taken advantage of. It's hard to understand your obligations when you first start reading contracts.
Right.
Your lawyer should be a partner to you who's helping you look at these agreements and not only get the best deal you can this time, but educate you so that you start being able to spot the kinds of opportunities and deals you want. They should
Okay.
be making you a better business person.
Yeah. Cool.
I will tell you, my biggest complaint as a lawyer is that a lot of people don't call us until it's too late. Oftentimes we get called when there's litigation, and that is very, very expensive. Your litigation bill is going to be way higher typically than your transactional bill. And that's why my firm has switched over to primarily what we call a fractional general counsel model.
Okay.
Fractional general counsel is a service that lawyers can offer, and it works well for businesses in this space because of the pattern that these businesses go through. We see a lot of businesses here start out as a person with a passion, and then they go through a growth period. And during that growth period, they typically have a lot of questions, issues, agreements, etc., that need to be put into place. And that requires a lawyer to do correctly. But
Okay.
there's no way that they could pay to have a lawyer on staff. There's too much stuff going on, but that expense is like not anywhere near the realm of possible for these businesses. So what law firms that are offering fractional general counsel models do is we say, okay, you're going to be part of a pool of clients that are going to hire us at a monthly rate. and we're only going to take a certain number of clients on these plans, on this work. Together, everything that all of these clients are paying adds up to what it would cost to have a lawyer on staff. And we've reduced the number of clients so that we can stay aware of what's happening in your business and there's no catch-up costs. And whenever you have a question, whenever you have something come up, you just call me.
Hmm.
You don't worry about a varying invoice. You don't worry about a ticking clock. Instead, you get the advantages of a lawyer on staff without the lawyer on staff salary.
Okay. Yeah, so being proactive for this process is way better than, just trying to fix your mistake kind of in the end.
Absolutely. A lot of businesses in this space, particularly on the functional mushroom and psychedelic side, are one bad lawsuit away from being bankrupt.
Dang. Okay.
And
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Because I was going to ask, like, what is like that line of like being, educational, but then kind of like in the hole or like have a felony with, promising medical, I don't know, stuff like that.
right. When we're working in this space, we are necessarily working on the edge of regulation. And that does not mean you're doing anything legal, but it does mean that the regulations are changing really fast and that they can be really, really hard to comply with. For example, in some states, it's required that a business have a place for a woman or a breastfeeding person to pump while they're at work. I cannot tell you the number of cannabis dispensaries I've walked into in those states that don't have that space because the cannabis regulations are so complicated that it can be really easy to forget about the labor regulations that you're
Yeah.
also under.
True.
And so all it would take is a well-placed lawsuit to really get a lot of money out of that business and to make it very expensive to either litigate that or settle that. When, if you had hired a lawyer in advance, the person would have been able to tell you, hey, we need to make sure that this is worked in and this is how you're going to do it and this is how you can do it in the most cost-effective way. Proactive lawyering is not very popular. We're not a revenue generating line item for your business, and that's understandable. But because of the great expense that hovers over the possibility of litigation,
Yeah.
I feel somewhat responsible for telling people that you have to consider legal a cost of doing business, and you're not going to build a multi-million-dollar business without spending some money on legal.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, yeah, and there's just so much packaging. I have conversations about this with a lot of my guests of like how people get away with selling some of these like psychedelic products at the gas station is like lack of labeling. So how do you feel about that? And do they not
Mislabeling.
have a lawyer at all then on staff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things going on here, right? First is like deceptive labeling. A lot of people will use words like psychedelic or psychoactive to label a product, and they'll slap, like tie-dye branding and bubble letters all over it, but it doesn't actually contain anything psychedelic.
Right.
That's a very popular way of marketing right now. That happens with both functional mushroom products that are perfectly legitimate as functional mushrooms and also random crap that we don't know what it is.
Yep.
And somewhere and everywhere in between, right? So there's the deceptive marketing side of this, or sometimes the unintentional aesthetic marketing side of this, where they're really trying to appeal to people who are interested in the art and culture of psychedelics more than they're trying to appeal to someone who's actually looking for a psychedelic product.
Interesting.
On the other hand, there really is the deceptive marketing side of this. We've seen a lot of this with like the AMT, DMT derivatives being marketed as psilocybin on some websites, essentially a research chemical that's similar but not the same. And it's frightening for consumers out there. I think a lot of people in this space are often skeptical when they see a lawyer or a business person talking about psychedelics. It seems overwhelmingly commercial
Yeah, I can see
in a
that.
way that I think is forgivable, right? Like, I'm not offended by somebody being shocked that someone with a law degree wants to do this. With that said, though, the reason that I care about this so much is that I want to see the increased liberalization and the increased access that we've started to see in the United States continue. And I want people who are genuinely afraid of putting some of this stuff in their bodies to have access to a reliable product.
Hmm.
And the best way that I can figure out how to do that is by using my legal education to sit down with well-meaning business owners and providers and say, okay, this is what we're going to advocate for legislatively. This is what we're going to create educationally. And this is what we can offer currently.
Well, I like it. All three of them. You gotta have all three.
Absolutely.
Do you find that there's another kind of marketing tactic around like the mycelium versus maybe fruiting body? That's such a big debate in the mushroom space. It's like, oh, does your product have fruiting bodies or mycelium or both or neither? What's your ideas on that?
Oh, yeah. So oftentimes, what I see in the mycelium or especially the functional mushroom supplement or tea kind of
Mm-hmm.
space or the gummy kind of space
Oh, the
is
gummies.
that the producers and the owners of these businesses are often far more sophisticated than the average consumer who's looking at their products and their understanding of mycelium in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see a lot of very sophisticated growers and producers talking about fruiting body percentages, powder versus water extract, whether you're just using mycelium or whether you're combining both. We see really, really, really detailed marketing on this. But what we don't have currently, and I hope this will change, it's changing to some degree, are, large scale, long-term scientific studies on the differences between using different parts of the mycelium or different parts of the mushroom in specific delivery and dosage modalities
Yeah.
and amounts. So we have a lot of independent brand testing that says the best way to do this is XYZ, and my product does it XYZ way, and we're the only ones on the market doing so. But we don't have that independent body of research.
Mm-hmm.
So for consumers, it's very confusing,
Yes.
right? It
It's
depends
very
on whose
new.
copy on their website you believe more. Um, so, what I'm encouraging brands to do as we have these debates within the mushroom community is to put some of their profits and some of their effort into backing or sponsoring the scientific community and the
Yeah.
research that's going on and to highlight those people on their platforms. If you are a brand owner out there and you start talking to people in the scientific community and they have disagreements with you about the way that you're structuring your product or the way that you're formulating something, that's a debate worth having publicly. That is going to give you a more sophisticated and a more devoted consumer base over time. When people are educated about something, they tend to be passionate about it. And when people are passionate about something, they're loyal to it. So you're not hurting your long-term marketing strategy by advancing discussions that may indicate that your initial product is not ideal for everyone. In fact, you're advancing the entire community and you're creating that customer base that you're going to want over time when the functional mushroom trend is no longer on, the first page of Google and on every magazine cover.
Yes. Yes, everybody's moms and grandmas are on to mushrooms nowadays, cannabis, mushrooms. It's everywhere now. So I hope that there's more, I guess, regulation in the right way. Hmm.
Yeah. And I hope that people are willing to invest in education. I
Yeah.
think that there's such a concern from brand owners, and it's understandable. It's expensive to launch a brand.
Mm.
It's expensive to sell a product. And so the idea that you're going to take some of that capital that you raise to the extent that you raise any and invest it in education or research can be a
Yeah.
hard sell, but it can also be fundamental to taking something that's currently a trend and making it an everyday part of society. I
Yes.
always use this with like the Starbucks example.
Hmm.
People did not used to buy coffee every day. That
Hmm.
was not a thing, but there's a huge percentage of Americans now that go out for takeout coffee pretty darn regularly. They've learned about different coffee drinks or how to order or what they might like in a way that did not exist
Hmm.
for previous generations. We want things like functional mushrooms to be that kind of interwoven into the fabric of the way somebody thinks about what they put into their body every day,
Hmm.
not just a wellness trend. If you want to be sustainable in this business and you really are passionate about helping people with mycelium, the way to do that is to do that kind of consumer education where people stop thinking of this as, oh, I'm hopping on the new trendy wellness thing. And this is just what I do every day to take care of myself.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like move from the trendiness into the lifestyle. Like this is kind of the lifestyle that people could be on and kind of include mushrooms on a daily basis, kind of however format you do, based on cooking or tinctures, shakes, coffee, mushroom coffee. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, what have you kind of found with mushroom coffee? Now I'm kind of interested in like the labeling at markets. People ask about, oh, have you heard about the mushroom coffee? And I love how it's the mushroom coffee, and there's like so many brands.
Um, I think that mushroom coffee is a great example of educating a consumer on a product they might have never known that they wanted.
Hmm.
People are being really innovative in the mushroom coffee space. They see that coffee is essential and kind of interwoven in the routines of so many Americans.
Yep.
I think of coffee as like a very American uniting kind of thing. As much as I disagree with so many other people out there about so many things, most of the time people will meet you for a cup of coffee,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So calling these kind of functional mushroom powders mushroom coffee and developing flavor profiles that either use coffee or mimic coffee products is
Hmm.
really interesting. Um, However, I think there's limited evidence for a lot of these products that you're getting an active dose of the mushrooms that they advertise. As we all know, there's a big difference between ingesting like powdered dried mushroom and like a water extracted product.
Hmm.
And we all know that there's a massive difference in drinking a serving of something as it's labeled on the package versus getting an active dose of the substance advertised on the package.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for
So,
saying that.
yeah. So I think there is a lot of room for education and also for market disruption in the mushroom coffee space. If a brand wants to move ahead in that space, in my opinion, this is the perfect place to really invest in that research and be first in the market in presenting the data from people outside of your company using your company's platform.
Hmm.
Have someone independent from you explain to me that they've reviewed this product and give me the positives and negatives. Give me what it is about this formula that I should be looking for and
Hmm.
show me the best way to use it from
Hmm.
someone who's not on your payroll. I think that's going to launch some brands well far ahead of just whatever mushroom coffee product is next to pop up on your Instagram feed.
Absolutely. And I like doing those reviews on my podcast because of that reason. Like they're not all equal. And like you were saying, they don't even have like the medicinal dose of mushrooms per serving. So it's just a very trendy thing. But yeah, really, really interesting point, especially when they're marketing digestion health. And to me, I'm like, coffee, don't you like, isn't it a diuretic? Like, aren't you, moving, the stuff inside anyway? So, how would that help? I don't know. How would the mushroom specifically help with digestion when coffee is the thing that kind of moves through you? So it's a good combination of like for weight loss, you know?
Yes. I'm also always very skeptical of any product that doesn't give me really specific testing information, at least on the larger packaging or on their
Mm,
website.
okay, explain.
Um, so we know that testing functional mushrooms is something that's not really standardized.
Yep.
And we've seen things like labs test a specific batch of mushroom coffee, and the only thing they're testing for is like beta glucans. So
Yes.
I can't look at those test results and know that the mushroom advertised on the package is actually the mushroom that's in the product.
Mm,
If you wanted to get a really high beta glucan score, you would just submit yeast.
yes.
If that's all they're testing for, that's what you would do. So it's difficult for me as a consumer to look at something with a really, really high beta glucan score and go, oh, yes, this is definitely lion's mane, or this is
Yeah,
definitely
true.
cordyceps. That doesn't show me that as a consumer. And so looking for, your best labs, your best consumer information, and incorporating that into your branding, I think helps a skeptical consumer
Mm.
um, come around to your product versus the other millions of similarly soft pastel Gen Z marketed mushroom products that are on the shelves everywhere. The
Yeah.
marketing is beautiful, but it's not very informative right now. And I think we're getting to a point where informative is going to be the market driver over beautiful.
Sorry, I had some fire rescue just drive by, so I tend to try to mute it as much as I can. Um, yeah, and now that we've hopefully not scared everybody into not creating a mushroom maybe brand, what is something if somebody wanted to start their own mushroom brand, what is kind of like the first legal trap that people could be looking for to make sure that they don't fall into that? Or, what is kind of some advice that you would give to first time mushroom launchers?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say I'm not giving legal advice to people that I haven't talked to or don't
Hmm.
know. These are just some general best practices to be thinking about when
Perfect.
you're starting your business. The first thing I would think about is what do your agreements look like, and do you really understand them?
Mm.
If you're using a processor, or you're not retailing these things yourself, or you're white labeling them or packaging them in some way, do you understand what it is that you've agreed to? Oftentimes, we find that people look at, say, an MSA or a supply chain agreement, and they don't understand the financing side of it and how that works, or they don't understand the division of obligations.
Okay.
Um, Oftentimes, people will have discussions with the person they're agreeing with, and in a very simplified way, they'll say something like, I'm going to grow and dry these mushrooms. You're going to powder and package them, and you're going to use this branding, and then you're going to return them to me, and I'm going to be the retailer. Great. But your contract might say something completely different,
Mm.
especially if you're pulling like a standard form off the internet or something like that, or you're using like an AI model to review your contracts. It might say something along the lines of like, all liability resulting from the way that these things are packaged falls on the retailer. And even though they weren't the ones to package it, that's a very kind of common misunderstanding that people have. Where does responsibility for this action fall?
Mm.
So I always advise people do not sign contracts without having a lawyer review them. There's somebody out there that can help you do that. So when you're starting out and it seems really intimidating to go to a lawyer and say, I'm thinking of working with this person, can you help me talk through the agreement? Please get over that feeling of intimidation and go do it. Because years down the line, when you've built this baby into something that is a reality for you,
Hmm.
when you've taken your passion project and you've made it real, you want to be able to protect it.
Yeah.
The next kind of immediate thing I tell people to think about is your IP trademark. You are giving birth to your idea. I know I keep using like the parenthood
I like
metaphor,
it. I like it.
but
People relate to it.
people are passionate about this. And I think being able to work in something that you're really passionate about, especially if you're like us and you love these plants, you love the fungi, and you care about producing something beautiful from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, you don't want somebody to be able to take that branding and that name that you've built for yourself and use it themselves. We
Mm-hmm.
see people use other people's business goodwill all the time, and it is devastating to a small producer.
Right.
It's devastating to somebody who is truly passionate about what they've built. And so, trademark and IP law is something you cannot be thinking about early enough. Immediately upon thinking about launching your business, you should think about talking to someone about how to protect your IP.
Okay.
The next thing I tell people to worry about is cybersecurity, data privacy, and the ADA when it comes to your website. Um, there have recently been a rash of lawsuits on the cannabis side of the space having to do with non-ADA compliant websites and digital content.
Okay.
This is often something that you can build into your website as you're building out your data privacy policies, your software use agreements, et cetera, et cetera. But it is so much easier to do preemptively before you launch your website than after you've already put this content out there publicly. And it may take removing some things or rebranding some content or not being able to use some of the digital content that you've produced in order to make that website compliant. People forget that startup status does not mean that compliance regulations don't apply to you.
Mm, true.
All of the rules apply, whether you're a 100-year-old business or a 1-year-old business. And so having some idea of what those responsibilities are and how you can protect your consumers' data and make them able to access your digital content is really important.
Oh,
The number one way for people to lose consumer trust is to leak their data.
yes.
So as we start talking about how to build out your business, this kind of cybersecurity, data privacy, ADA compliance piece also goes hand in hand with insurance.
Mm,
You might not want to just start buying insurance policies, especially when capital is pretty limited.
yeah.
You might want to ask your lawyer, like, hey, what do I need to be focused on first if I have limited amounts of money? And how can I bundle that insurance package in a way to make it more affordable?
Mm-hmm.
Your lawyer can help you find a good broker, they can help you find a good agent, and help you find an insurance program, an insurance package that works best for you given the resources that you have right now.
Mm,
Um, the last thing I would tell somebody to be kind of immediately concerned about is business succession planning and your own succession planning. To live in a human body is to be fragile. I'm a person that became disabled at 29 years old. I understand what it's like to have
wow.
things really change. And unfortunately, we're mortal beings. All of us are going to die. If your business,
Spoiler.
yes, if your business is holding on to lots of product, money, you owe people stuff, you don't want to leave your family or your loved ones or, your community in the lurch if something happens to you. You need to have a plan for, especially if you're in a regulated space like cannabis or medical psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
how is this product going to be handled when I pass away? How is the business going to be handled? Where are these interests going to go? If I have business partners, what is going to happen when I pass away to my interest within the business?
Mm-hmm.
All of those initial agreements that we talked about, corporate formation, MSAs, supply and packaging, et cetera, you can build business succession planning into some of that. But
Okay.
as a business owner or somebody who owns even part of a business, you're going to need to plan your succession in a way that protects anyone who's going to survive you and also protects your business partners who went out of their way to invest in you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's the part no one really likes to talk about, but it is essential to
Yeah.
running your business responsibly. And oftentimes it's not as expensive as the rest of the stuff we've talked about.
Hmm. Okay. And I don't know if you'd want to share this at all, but what is like if somebody's looking to get maybe basic to full-time help with like a lawyer, what is like the cost variation? Like if, somebody's looking to packaging and I would like to hire you for that, what does that kind of cost for a
Sure.
person?
So it's going to vary pretty significantly based on a
Hmm.
couple of things. Your state or the city that you're in is going to cause your lawyer bills to go up and down.
Okay.
Your fee structure. So whether you're doing something hourly, flat fee, or as part of like a fractional general counsel agreement
True.
will also change your fees. I will say that within my practice, kind of what we do when we first meet a business, when we first have a consultation with them, is we'll sit down for an hour. And during that hour, we'll plan out, okay, this is what it looks like you're going to need for either the specific thing that you're trying to do, or if you're launching a business for like the first year of your
Okay.
business, this is what you're going to need.
Hmm.
Then we look with them at their budget, at whether or not they've planned for legal. And we also look at, are you a social equity kind of business? Are you contributing to bettering society in a way that we as a firm want to support?
Hmm.
Um, and if so, we try to help you fit that bill into your budget.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I've seen people be able to get the support that they needed depending on their responsibilities for as low as like $500 a month.
Okay.
I've seen some people with really complicated needs
Hmm.
that are large and really all encompassing, and they want like all their contracts covered in a monthly fee too.
Okay.
And that's like as high as like $15,000 a month.
Okay.
So there's a really significant amount of variance. But the cool thing about working with a firm like Reddick is that it can be really customizable.
Cool.
And we can also tell you things like, okay, this is what it would cost if we did this hourly. This
Mm.
is what it would cost if we did this flat fee. And this is what this would look like if you were using us as your general counsel, if we were acting as your fractional general counsel.
Right.
You can
Okay.
pick before you decide like a contract what it is that you want to invest in for legal and how you can limit your expenses moving forward. I also want to say this. The legal bill should never be why somebody doesn't have the support that they need. If you're a business owner out there and you're listening to me talk and you're like, geez, I really want to hire Victoria, I really want to hire Reddick Law Group, but I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. Go on and call us. We will at least talk you through what it is that you can do to get that need met in a consultation. And whether or not you choose to hire us more long term, we genuinely, as people who care about this space, do not want the legal bill to be the reason that you don't have the support that you need. And we're
Right.
going to help you figure it out.
Oh, Victoria's here for you.
Yeah, I desperately don't want to be like one of those lawyers on a billboard that's like, we're here, we're part of your family, that like we're professionals, right? But on the other hand,
Yeah.
not everybody needs an expensive lawyer.
Mm.
There may be alternatives that you can use that we can point you towards if we're not the right fit. On the other hand, you might really need to invest right now, depending on where your business is, to prevent big problems down the road. And if we're seeing a train coming at you, we're not going to hide that information from you either.
Yeah. I hope not. Cool. Okay. Cool. That I guess clears some things up. And maybe we can pivot to, I think in our discovery call we were talking about how not all psychedelics are illegal. And I was
No,
like,
they're not.
what, I would love to hear more on that.
Yeah, so there's this kind of widespread misconception that psychedelic assisted therapy or psychedelic experiences are completely inaccessible in the United States.
Hmm.
And that makes me really sad because there are definitely substances that you can access legally in a legal format depending on where you are.
Hmm.
In 49 out of the 50 states, Amanita muscaria, the red and white capped mushrooms that have inspired so much beautiful art, oh, gorgeous earrings, um, are not regulated, meaning
Mm.
they're not scheduled drugs. This is not like an explicit endorsement by the government that they are, legal, but they are not illegal in the way that some of these other substances are.
Right.
Um, Keep in mind, criminal law has to be interpreted very specifically. If we want to make something illegal because we're restricting someone's rights, we have to address that specifically. That's why the Controlled Dangerous Substances Act is 1,000,000 pages long and lists out very, very, very explicitly what is regulated. Amanita muscaria only falls on that list in the state of Louisiana.
Why there? Why
There's
specifically?
There's a very long kind of historical reason why Amanita muscaria is so regulated in Louisiana. I think we could have an entire podcast about it. But basically, that's the one state where you're not going to see Amanita supplements for sale, things like that.
Hmm.
There are also ketamine-assisted therapy clinics in every state, at least that I've investigated. The kind of care that you're going to receive at ketamine-assisted therapy clinics can vary pretty significantly. It's an emerging area of medicine. And so what we call the standard of care is emerging. So I encourage you to do your research. This is not an endorsement of every ketamine clinic on the planet. This is just letting you know those things exist. And a ketamine-assisted therapy clinic can offer that psychedelic version of therapy that some people need or some people might want as part of their overall mental health plan.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Spravato, the nasal spray, be endorsed for major depressive disorder
I've
recently.
never heard of that.
Yes, that's esketamine.
Okay.
It's not at a psychedelic dose, but if you're struggling with SSRIs and you're not getting the results that you need, it's worth asking your doctor about Spravato and about how that might fit in to your overall medication plan.
Interesting.
On the other hand, we also have these states like Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, and recently the Iowa House passed a bill on this that are starting legalized medical psilocybin programs. So Oregon and Colorado are further ahead on this. Patients are going to be able to access there first. The New Mexico program is supposed to be online around 2028. And then the Iowa program that has been pushing its way through the legislature just got through the House. And so we're waiting to see what the Senate says. If it passes, it'll start sometime in 2026, 2027.
Okay.
And those are going to be access to your classic psilocybin. Most of the states are talking about whole mushroom products in those cases, so dried psilocybin mushrooms.
Okay.
And you're going to have different levels of facilitators versus medical providers engaging in those therapies depending on where you're receiving them at.
Okay.
Back to ketamine, let's assume that you don't live somewhere with a ketamine-assisted therapy clinic and you can't drive to where one is, or you view that as unsafe given the kind of treatment that you're going to be receiving. There are take-home ketamine programs.
Whoa.
You may have heard of something like Mind Bloom. There are a few other ones. There are a lot of varying opinions on the safety and efficacy of take-home ketamine therapy. I have engaged in it as part of my own mental health journey, and I had some varying opinions and results as well. So, if you're somewhere where access is going to be a problem for you, and the mail might be the best option for you, I encourage you to do some serious research before it is that you decide to engage in one of these take-home programs, and perhaps also talk to your doctor before you do so. But that is something that's out there in the US that many people don't realize can offer some of the benefits of psychedelic assisted therapy.
Okay. And so would you recommend maybe somebody is at home with you and that's kind of like the case, or why would some people, still want to be wary of it?
So I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to give you medical advice, but what I can tell you is this. Every protocol for these take-home kind of ketamine kits, for lack of a better term, varies pretty significantly because once again, the standard of care for the entire field is still developing.
Yeah, true.
People are coming up with their way of doing things. For example, the program I was involved in required that I have someone home with me, and it required that I regularly meet online with a facilitator. I really liked that they had those safety protocols in place.
Yeah.
But I found the dosing information that they gave me As a lawyer who's worked in medical with a long history of interpreting medication protocols, to still be kind of difficult to understand.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that
because
would
of,
be
yeah,
scary then.
and because of the way that the program was set up, I could ask questions to my facilitator, and I had that additional person there. But had that option not been there, I would have had a really hard time with it.
Hmm.
So it's worth talking to your doctor and seeing if they think that you're in a good place to do this and that your home environment and your person that's going to be there with you are safe to
Hmm.
do this with. It's also worth looking into the individual protocols of each of the companies you might be considering and saying, looking at this, do I understand what's expected of me? And do I feel safe going into using this protocol? Um, your mood, your experience, your relationship to the medicine is, at least in my opinion, going to affect your ability to get the most out of the treatment.
Hmm.
These things can be a real investment for people. They can be very expensive, they're a time investment, and it can be scary, especially when you're suffering mental health wise, to engage in a new medication or a new experience.
Right.
Since take home doesn't have the traditional support of having your provider there, of having the monitors on, of being in an environment that's been specifically curated for this kind of therapy,
Hmm.
be overwhelming. And so a little bit of healthy skepticism about any new medical treatment, much less one that you're doing by yourself at your house with one other person there to observe you, I think is necessary as we continue to grow and learn about the benefits of psychedelic assisted therapy as a society.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I didn't really actually know that they had at home kind of take home kits. I mean, it's good to have options for everybody, but yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm from a rural area, right?
Hmm.
So if I were still living at home where I grew up, I would have to drive at least 2 hours to get to a ketamine assisted therapy clinic, which probably means I would also have to rent a hotel room because I'm not
Hmm.
going to be safe to drive home. I would have to
Right.
bring my partner with me. They would have to wait on me through therapy. And then either he'd have to drive hours home or we'd have to rest there. And then I would drive back the next day.
Yeah.
Massive commitment.
Yes.
Not one that, especially with the cost of ketamine assisted therapy in the United States, many people can use. However, if you're someone like me who's struggled to find the right depression treatment, it might get to a point where making that investment is something you want to consider.
Hmm.
I was very lucky that I had a supportive doctor who was helping me navigate the right things to try and how to do it. I picked a take-home kit. My take-home kit had some pretty, profound effects on my depression. It really helped me. On the other hand, it was not easy to use, and I had way more questions than I had when I had the provider there who
Yeah.
could explain to me what was going on and how to keep myself safe.
Hmm.
I found that my anxiety around treatment was a lot higher in the take home space than my anxiety was when I was going to a provider that I had met with, I trusted,
Hmm.
I felt really safe with. I am of the opinion, based on my personal experience alone, that if you can be there with an expert, being there with an expert is going to be best. But if you need a more accessible option where you live based on your finances, whatever, these things do exist. Just keep in mind that because something's cheaper doesn't always mean that it's going to be as effective. And we have to, as consumers, as patients who are looking for these solutions, be aware that we're vulnerable when we're looking for that, and we need to really make sure that we understand what it is that we're doing to our bodies. We can't just endorse things because there were positive results for some people from them.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I so I live in Florida currently, and I moved here from Minnesota. And since moving here, I've realized how I feel like maybe little funding or education is within like the doctors here versus up north, and like education, libraries, like dentistry, like all of these places. I feel like maybe have less funding, so it's cheaper, but again, it's not really the best route, just because I find that there's a lot of issues that I've run into with like care and education and safety. which is
Right.
really interesting.
There's this idea that like iron sharpens iron, right? If you're surrounded by a ton of really intelligent people in your field who are talking to you at networking events and conferences and things like that, you have the opportunity to learn a lot faster
Hmm.
than if you're the only person in an area. And so it can be scary. Like there are hundreds of thousands of Americans that live in rural places where their options for healthcare are way more limited
Hmm.
than they would be if they lived near a larger city. So I am not anti the idea of online care or of like take-home care. What I am anti is the idea that just because something is offered to you for sale, it's safe. And that just because something has worked for other people, it'll work for you.
Hmm.
I really think people underestimate how complicated it can be to benefit from these kinds of take-home things. And just before you spend your money, before you spend your time, consult the experts that you have in your life, read the website, make sure you understand and ask all of your questions, and make sure that you are as safe as you possibly can be.
Maybe grab a lawyer. I don't know. um, I have a few more questions that I guess I wanted to cover before I let you go, but a lot of people are talking about Schedule 35 and kind of what the legality is, with them and how they're able to kind of like function as what they are. So, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so Schedule 35, for anyone listening, is an online company that sells mycelium-based products specifically containing psilocybin. Schedule 35 is not unique in this. A couple of
Hmm.
searches online will show you that there are a number of companies that are operating from areas where possession and growth of psilocybin containing mushrooms is not illegal. Of course, these things are always illegal on the federal level. Please do not believe that federal laws have gone away because your state laws and local laws have changed. But there are these areas of the country where possession or growth on your own of psilocybin containing mushrooms is not illegal locally. It's not illegal in your locality. So, sometimes these companies will grow and produce products, will package them, and then they will create a website that says something along the lines of, "We are operating from a decriminalized area. Do you certify that you know the laws in your area?"
Hmm.
Um, and then you make that certification and then they mail you products. Um, Keep in mind when you are looking at something that is for sale online that a couple of things are probably true. Number one, unless you are located right next to that business that you are looking at their website for, the laws in your area, your local and state laws, probably vary from the place where this is located. So that is research that you as a consumer are responsible for doing and that you need to take a look at. The next thing that you need to know is probably true is that they have information posted on their website and on their packaging, and that you are not privy to where that information came from. So online, there are, and I'm not referring to a specific company here, but there are incidents we've seen of something being sold as one product when it contains another.
Mm.
Um, so it is possible that you are receiving something from, a top-notch producer that is doing everything perfectly. It's possible that you're not receiving what you thought that you were.
Mm.
Um, the last thing that is true is that this is illegal federally and that you are asking someone to put that substance in the mail and have it cross state lines, which is against federal law. So, this is one of those situations where people weigh risks and benefits and make decisions for themselves about what the risk is. But as a lawyer, my job is to tell you that these risks exist and that you need to consider them when you're deciding your own behavior.
Hmm.
You may have a perfectly fine experience. You may get arrested. Um, and so when you're choosing what it is that you're going to engage with online, keep those things in mind. The law doesn't go away just because something is offered on a sleek website on the internet.
Hmm. True. And so maybe back to where you were saying, their lawyer could say, oh, all of the the end result would be on the person purchasing, or are they at fault, or is it just like blamed on somebody else, or I guess how do you think they kind of have it set up?
So, with a lot of these companies, what I've seen is they have their disclaimer on their website that
Mm-hmm.
they're producing this somewhere where it is ostensibly legal, at least locally and
Okay,
statewide.
yeah.
So. Then there's another disclaimer that the customer checks off or
Mm-hmm.
electronically signs that says, I know the laws
Okay.
where I am,
Yep.
and I'm not breaking the laws there by having you ship this to me.
Gotcha.
Then there's still the shipping component, though,
Yeah.
where somebody is placing something that is regulated according to the Controlled Dangerous Substances Act in the mail
Mm-hmm.
and then receiving it either in the same state but a different locality or in a different state.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that could create criminal liability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how much that is enforced varies pretty significantly based on the administration at the time and their priorities. And so sometimes people look at those priorities and decide that they're going to take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
That is something I cannot tell people to not do. Ultimately, people are going to make the decision themselves whether or not they want to take that risk.
Right.
As a lawyer, I think it's important that you understand that just because a website says this is not illegal where we're producing it, and even if you live in an area with like a state program or, a home grow program where you're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to possess these things,
Right.
putting it in the mail and mailing it is still in and of itself risky.
Mm-hmm.
And the creation of criminal liability can happen. I hope to see that change. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that are doing really good work advocating for decrim. We
Mm-hmm.
talked here quite a lot about medical programs. And the reason I talk about medical programs a lot is that I am a disabled person and I see a lot of benefit to being able to access things through the medical system when I can't physically grow things on my own or do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the decrim work is equally important because there are always going to be people that can't access things through the medical system who still need them.
Yeah.
When something becomes medicalized, it tends to become more expensive in the United States. That's also always going to be a barrier to entry.
True.
So I encourage you, if you're interested in a company like Schedule 35 or like any of these other ones that are online, to look into your local decrim advocacy groups
Yep.
and consider doing that advocacy work. If this
Mm-hmm.
is something you really care about, there are tons of ways to get involved and push for really solid changes to the law without breaking it now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I actually interviewed Larry from Decriminalized Nature, so I had him on
Oh,
and I've talked
cool.
to them. So yeah, so in that episode we kind of cover like how you can kind of get that into your area, and there's tons of Discord groups that they have. So maybe I'll also post that link in the show notes for this one to listen to that episode, because that was a really good one too. And if people are really interested in getting that into their area, it's a good
There's
one.
wonderful, wonderful advocacy going on.
Mm-hmm.
There are local and state groups almost everywhere that are pushing this forward. And the decrim movement has been such a huge part of getting people medical access,
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that the medical movement has been such a huge part of getting attention to the decrim movement. These two things go together. They're not opposed to each other. And so if you care about this kind of advocacy, you can find your people and you can push forward for the future of providers, growers, and other people who want to make the space more accessible.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Victoria, for being on Flora Funga podcast today. Let people know where they possibly can find you, or any other things that you'd like to plug before I let you go.
Sure. If you would like to find me or my law firm, you can find us at rudiklawgroup.com. That's RUDICK lawgroup.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Victoria Svitanovich. That's CVITANOVIC. You can also find me on Instagram at Victoria_Instes.
Cool. Well, thank you. I will post all of those links down below so people can find you easily. And I probably will be hitting you up soon, because my mushroom company or farm that I work with, we're thinking of making a product. So now that I know that, like, all of this other things to do with it, I'll have to have a little chat with you off air.
Absolutely. We
Cool.
can make it work.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you so much for having me and for creating this resource.
yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll let you go.
Bye.
Well, thank you for listening and loving on this episode. If you also learned anything today, if you found something really, really interesting, please share, please leave a review. Please, if you have not followed or subscribed to this podcast yet, what are you waiting for? Because each subscription, I will go out and eat a blue lotus flower. And also, I have started a GoFundMe. I am helping to pay my editing team and PR crew. I have been trying to make high quality content for you guys, and it's really adding up. So if you want to donate, as little as $1 or however much you want, that link will be down below. So venture to my GoFundMe, and I am raising money to help pay for all of my production and editing and soon to be travels as well. So thank you everybody for being here for me and enjoying the podcast. So have a great week, my scientists, and go learn something new today. Peach, peach.